The Case of the Running Bag by Gene Postman, Chapter 1, On the Dock by the Bay. I was just waking up. I could hear 12 midnight being chimed in the distance. I was cold, wet, and coming down with the DTs. I looked up, and I could see the underneath of a wharf above me. What the hell was I doing passed out on a floating dock? I decided to quit drinking. Cold turkey. The irony of that phrase leaped into my mind. I needed a drink. I just couldn't get a drink. Now I remembered. I got kicked out of a bar because I had no money. I got arrested on a D&D, and then 24 hours later I got tossed out of the drunk tank. I don't remember much after that. Now I was laying down somewhere under a wharf, under a pier, waking up to the undulating motion of a floating dock and the stench of seawater and decaying vegetation. I was not the least bit happy. When I sat up, I found I was at the water's edge, and it was lapping up on the rotting wooden excuse for a dock I had landed on. I knew I had fallen because I was bruised and sore all over. I didn't seem to have any broken bones, so I hadn't been in a fight. No one tossed me down here. I had managed to stumble here all on my own. I moved to climb up the ladder onto the pier and to get my bearings. When I straightened up, I discovered I was entangled in some kind of a net. I cursed my luck, trying to shake it loose as I climbed the ladder. Suddenly, something from above hit me square in the chest and knocked me away from the ladder and the pier toward the water. I looked up as I was falling, and I could see the shadow of whoever threw whatever hit me. I yelled for help, and I hit the water. I went down under the surface of the water. Whatever hit me was pretty heavy, and it and I were all tangled up in the net. That cursed net was either going to drown me or save my life. I was attached to the dock, and it kept me and the dingus from being pulled down further into the water. I could see some light through the water and decided that way was up. I should have let go of the dingus, but I hung on to it. I don't know why. I tried to focus on the light from the pier as I looked up through the water. The net had stopped pulling down, and though I was entangled in it, it was taut where it was attached to me and the dock. I used it to pull myself to the surface. When I broke through the water, I took several deep breaths of air. The light from the pier wavered in the mist. I heard a machine start up. A secondary light moved around above and then disappeared. I climbed out of the water onto the dock. The dingus, which I now realized was a large bag, hung from the dock and tangled in the net. I was soaked, and I began to shiver from the cold. I pulled the bag up onto the dock. I was shaking so badly I couldn't open the latches on the bag. I sat down with my back against the ladder and tried the latches again. Finally, I was able to open them. There were a couple of weights in the bag. I pulled them out and tossed them into the water. I rummaged around in the bag, examining the contents a little more. There were men's clothes, a suit, shoes, underwear, also a train ticket, a notebook, a passport without a picture, and some other odds and ends, and a Navy Colt 44. Shit. I wondered why someone would throw the bag into the bay. Clearly, they wanted to get rid of it, but why? The gun? I shook my head even more than it was shaking already. The inside of the bag was made of some kind of rubbery material, watertight. I checked the suit size, a tad big for me, but it was mostly dry, and I wasn't. I started to strip off my clothes. I must have been a comical sight as I shivered while stripping. I used what I wasn't going to wear to dry off. Then I started putting on the dry clothes. I wasn't one for t-shirts, but I was cold. I finished dressing and suddenly realized how good it felt to be dry again. I climbed up the ladder with the bag and found a bench to sit on. I looked around. No one to be seen. I took a deep breath and explored the bag some more. There was something familiar about it. Not this particular bag, but I'd seen others like it. I found what I was looking for at the bottom of the bag. If you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't have found it. A hidden pocket. This one was well hidden. I expected the pocket to be empty. Boy, was I wrong. There were some keys, a business card, and an address. 50 double sawbucks. $1,000. This bag sure didn't belong to whoever threw it over. Nobody throws away $1,000. It was a running bag. I'd seen them before, in another life. I was an MP in the Army. Men who were not quite straight would keep a bag hidden for a quick getaway, and that's what this was. Whoever belonged to wasn't going to come looking for it. My guess was he'd already made his final journey. I wondered if his body was floating somewhere in the bay. I took out the Colt and weighed it in my hand. I brought my arm back, getting ready to heave it into the bay, but then I stopped. The gun was going to be bad news, probably used to kill somebody. Tossing it into the bay was the smart thing to do. It was the one thing in the bag that could bring me trouble. I lowered my arm and looked at the gun, this time concentrating on how it felt in my hand. What the hell? Might be leverage if I need some time. I decided to keep it, and I put it back into the bag. I'd had a couple of bad years. The sisters' fate were fickle bitches, and at that moment they seemed to be smiling on me. So I decided to take the ride for a while. I searched through the bag a little more. There was also a money belt and some hidden pocket. I put most of the money into it, but I kept a couple hundred in my pocket for my immediate needs. I latched the bag and got up to leave the pier. I was suddenly hungry, so I went looking for the nearest all-night diner. I needed coffee and food. I wanted a scotch. But against character, I went for the food. As I sat in the diner having coffee and food, I looked through the bag to see what else I could find. The card with an address was a business card. It said Discreet Inquiries. It had a phone number, an address, and no name. Discreet Inquiries indeed. I had a feeling that someone had gone dead because of a discreet inquiry. Then it hit me. Discreet was the wrong word. Discreet means quiet or unobtrusive on the QT. Whoever made this card was either illiterate or a lousy speller. If I had any sense, I would lose the bag, keep the money, and live well, at least for a while. Then it occurred to me whoever hit me with the bag had been waiting for me. I had been close to the top of the ladder. In a sense, I was at the most precarious position. He wasn't throwing the bag away. He was throwing away my life, killing me. But who and why? The address on the card was 891 Post, Suite 401, San Francisco. It was not too bad a part of town, a couple of miles from the wharf. The sister's fate had not been good to me today. Well, actually yesterday. It was past midnight, but now I had money in my pocket, a full stomach, and a curious nature, particularly when someone just tried to kill me. I looked at the card again. The irony hit me. I was about to make some discreet inquiries of my own, not on the QT, but separate ones unrelated to whatever else was going on. My life might just depend upon it. I decided to take a walk to the address on the card. Maybe I could get some answers. I could always lose the bag later. I paid my tab with a generous tip and left the diner. As I was walking towards Post, I could have sworn I heard a woman laughing in the background. The outside door to 891 Post was locked. One of the keys on the ring from the bag opened the door into the lobby, which was deserted. Curiouser and curiouser. It looked like it might be a small business building. There was an elevator across from the reception desk, and down a short hall was a door that said stairs. I took the stairs. I figured it would be better if I didn't run into anyone this late. Fewer people would be using the stairs. I climbed to the 4th floor. The hallway was empty. The building was eerily quiet. Another key on the ring opened the door to Suite 401, where discreet inquiries were made. I entered the suite. Suite. There's a laugh. The room was small, a couple of chairs for clients, a sofa, a desk for the receptionist, a coat tree, a locked file cabinet, a phone, and an intercom, and dust on the desk. I figured there might not have been a receptionist for at least a week or so. Anyway, I shrugged and closed the door and made sure it was locked. I let myself into the inner office. This was better. A nice sofa, client chairs, power desk, a really nice chair behind the desk, file cabinet, a clothes tree, coat tree, with an overcoat and a brown fedora. The desk was neat. A clean blotter, a pen and pencil set that was monogrammed MP, a phone, and another end of the intercom. There were a couple of doors off to one side. One turned out to be a closet door, and the other led to a small bathroom with a sink and toilet. I suddenly had a yen for hot water on my face. I dropped the bag in the office, and to my surprise there was hot water. Afterwards I wiped my face with a towel and looked around the office. The only light came in from the street through the window with discreet inquiries ink written backwards. Some of this didn't make any sense. I didn't think the running bag belonged to Mr. Discreet Inquiries, so why were his keys in it? I wondered if he knew who wasn't coming back, or possibly who was interested in killing me. The outer office was almost Spartan, but the inner office had comfort written all over it. This was a town was all right. This part of town was all right, but somehow this office just didn't fit. Suddenly I was very tired. I really wanted a drink, but I knew that was the last thing I needed right now. I went back to the outer office and put a chair under the doorknob and jammed it home. I went back to the inner office and took the Colt out of the bag. I checked to see if it was loaded. It had 5 cartridges in the cylinder. I hadn't really done anything wrong, but I was an uninvited guest, and the Colt would provide sufficient persuasion for anyone taking exception to my presence. At least it should give me time to tell my side of things. I remembered yawning and laying down on the sofa. I wondered what time it was.